Like, I think this might be useful for me to watch back if I run into anything. Okay. Change okay. I don't know what happened to the save button here. It's weird. Fix it later. Right, so we just.
Do you want me to open it up and check it's working?
Oh, sure. That's always good to double check.
Oh, okay. I wonder what that was like. Oh, that's okay, yeah. I was playing around this.
Right. Everything is okay. But here's the save button.
For some reason, all the stupid ways. So the name sounds like S word, S dash word plus live plus.
Yes, you're live.
Okay, great, thanks.
Not JS.
And then one last tip is, I can think if it's your husband in the background, I can hear him quite clearly. So as long as he's not saying anything he shouldn't be, then you're good.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, he's
no. I'm fine. It's just more while you're streaming.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Cool. I think we can test.
Okay, cool. So by test, do you mean deploy this as a branch?
Yeah, either
or rerun the, yeah. I think I created this workflow.
Yeah, I found debugging these to be an absolute nightmare because you can rerun as long as you haven't changed the job definition.
Okay. So there's one repeat job. So the this is just for the stream recording. The only thing I changed with Go right now was the deal SSH passphrase, which I created after generating a new SSH key, and then the what else did we change?
It's like
DO SSH key, which is the private key, right?
Yes.
And then where did we put the? We put the public key into the authorized keys file in DigitalOcean itself after SSH in. Oh yeah, I just streamed that key. That's okay.
So if you want to hit the stage, you can click on the stage job on the left. Mm-hmm. Yeah. These the two little actions that do the SSH commands and the file copying. I was expecting that what they would do is just use SCP and do a secure copy of all the files that you specify. From the logs, what it looks like they do is they actually just zip them all up into a single file and then just push one file and then unzip it, which is a bit odd, but
so by these files, are you talking about like packages that are?
All the code that we want to push to the staging server. So it'd be the full Python project.
I see.
Django project.
What is coverall's repo token?
I don't know.
Okay, good to know.
Is that going to be something for doing code coverage? Would be my guess.
Yeah, maybe someone else added it. Uh,
Does it sort of walk through like a complete party to give you a full feel of it, or is it just?
I don't know what coveralls is.
hmm. The deal off token, I update that.
Yeah, that's a great thing to look at.
I don't know where that's needed.
You get narrow or knife, you get knife. I'm attacking the self with the.
Yeah, I honestly, I was a bit confused.
Yeah, so I would expect that if we were going to be doing some things like creating the droplets from GitHub.
Okay. So
the kind of giveaway is that it was updated on the same date that it looks like I updated everything else, so it probably was me.
Okay.
The two places I would go to double check would be the wiki page I wrote.
Yeah, I'm going there right now.
And the other one would be we could look inside the actions definition and see if it's referenced.
Digital access, open
DNS
access for
updates.
DNS updates. Do you remember?
Why are we doing DNS updates as part of the pipeline? So the access token essentially allows you to use the DigitalOcean CLI.
Oh.
So you can do things like create droplets, delete droplets, etc. The token should still be valid. I just can't think why I used it.
I do remember in the DigitalOcean control panel, there's like a list of users with, and I think everyone might have an access token. Okay.
Didn't work. Empty archive. It's an interesting error message. Have we changed the project structure?
Possibly at the time that you were working on it was still the CBV3 Django app or something.
So if we have a look at the... So I would expect copy to fail with some sort of access error if it was an access problem. I wasn't expecting to see tar empty archive. Do you want to expand line 1 and see if there's any detail behind that? No. Debug false is on as well, so we might be able to turn debug on. Oh, and it's only copying Docker Compose staging and Docker Compose YAML. So I was wrong. It's not copying the entire project. It's just copying the two Docker Compose definitions. So if they've moved, it would be an empty file. So let's have a look in the actions. I think the easiest way to find, I found the easiest way to find them is in the code. The standard repo folder. and I think they're in .github and then actions. Workflows, yeah. So 2 things we want to check while we're here. One is that environment variable that we don't know why it's there, which is the do token, which doesn't appear to be used. No, it was something else. Do auth token. No results. So I suspect it's not used and we can just delete it, but we can do that later. The other one is the source of the SSH copy, which will be in the YAML for the action or the workflow. So line 45, yeah. So in the root of the repo, do those YAML files exist?
Yeah, nope. So yeah, so we need to, where did I put those files? There's
So
one Docker compose stage. Wait, it does look like it is in there. Am I just not?
I'm going to.
Where is this file?
Is this in the right branch? So staging deployment experiment. Is that the branch that's we're running the action against?
Yes, it is.
Currently at 4, and then run away.
Staging deployment experiment.
Okay.
So let's see. So I'm looking for the Docker compose staging file. It was in projects.
I know, but it's like.
Should I?
I'm gonna run all the way back.
I'm fairly certain I was following the previous deployment experiment. So I'm gonna look at your branch.
So a couple of things going through my head for debugging this would be we could copy a file that does nothing, like the README or something, which is in the root. We could just add README to the end of the list. And then we could just SSH onto the droplet and see if README gets created. That would be one. The other option would be to... I was going to say list the files before we copy them, but that's a little bit harder.
Okay. Or can I try moving this outside of the project?
That just probably feels like really annoying.
You can, or you... I guess either way, we have to make a commit and push it, don't we?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, so does someone think how does an ally? No.
I was going to say just change the...
Just rename the
action dash, but then you still have...
Oh, I guess, yeah, that's... So you're... With that, yeah. With that?
Yep. Do both of those files exist?
Yeah, I'm double checking that the second one also exists. Docker compose proxy, I remember.
That 100% would have been something I created as part of the PR and something that never made it into main.
I can also attack.
So
Because the bottom half of your card is attack.
Oh no, I forgot to copy that over. Okay.
So let's just delete it. Remove it from the.
It's this one, right? Do you think?
Yeah, I think ignore it for now. Let's see if we can get the Django project up and running.
Okay. Yeah, I don't.
That looks good.
The only thing I don't know is why it's saying I have an extra space there with branches, but it's probably okay.
So this is just for context, I guess. What it's doing is there are two parts to it. There's kind of the build part where we create the Docker image.
The past few fights, it's just been
and that gets pushed somewhere, I presume, to GitHub. In their packages repository. And then we run the copy files, which copies that Docker Compose definition to the Droplet. And then to start or restart that Docker container, I think we do an SSH onto the Droplet and then do a Docker Compose up. So we don't actually move the project files itself to the Droplet. The Droplet then goes and pulls the Docker image from GitHub. But we'll see. And there may be a better way to do this.
Is the SSH user necessary? Remember?
Yes, because otherwise it will use the default user account.
Right. It's been set TCP.
That GitHub uses when it runs, and I think it might be root. I'm not sure. It might be GitHub. It might be Git. I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's not set in the files.
I'm
guessing it's set in the Droplet? Or in...
No. Have a look in the API staging.
Oh, it's here.
Yes. So what I was surprised at is why was that not found when you ran...
I know.
I think that's because I think AG might by default exclude Git folders. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Okay, that's good to know.
So you could now do that same search again for the DO auth token. No, that's. I would delete that and see if we get an error. We can always create another auth token.
Okay. Sure. Just remove that.
Possibly the worst debugging technique out there is just delete it and see what happens.
What is staging Django secret key?
Django uses a secret key for Django things. For the life of me, I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I think it's things like it might be session secrets or hashing or something. It's a secret key that you specify for projects.
Do you remember how you generated it?
I'd have to go to the Django docs. I suspect it's just an arbitrary string, in which case I used a password generator.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I see, it's in the deployment checklist.
Secret key.
Large random value. Okay, so I guess I won't update it because it's set already.
From memory, I think the only time it's a problem is if you change it, then any things that use it in the database, so active sessions and that type of stuff, I think become problematic. So it doesn't matter what the value is. I tell you, I won't have a copy because I deleted all the private versions of stuff when I created the GitHub environment variables. But because we're using a new database, I don't think it matters. I think if you were to go and change that mid, so let's say the site's been running for a few days and you wanted to go and change it, I think it might cause problems.
Okay, thanks. Just change this.
I think that was a comment or something in the Django docs. So anyone in our community more familiar with Django would be able to say exactly what it uses, or what it's used for, sorry.
So, into archive.
Is this the same?
I did commit this, right? Like I pushed this up. Oh, well, no. Okay, sorry. Give me seconds. Copy files. So that's correct, right? This is the...
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah.
So if you...
okay, so it's in this branch. Is it...
Oh, yeah, you can't do a rerun.
Wait. Oh, okay, new error. It's the run deployment error.
So copied the files, right?
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Awesome. So if you wanted to actually go check and see what that did, you can go and SSH onto the Droplet.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I forget. Droplet name every time.
I think we need to
it's the other thing, right? SSH with the flag.
Yeah, or you can use root and then just switch the user.
I have to paste in. I guess I
use root.
That's fine.
The reason I say use root is because my next suggestion is going to be that you delete that SSH key from your laptop.
Okay.
Because you don't need it, and it's confusing to have lying around. It's now that's a key pair that's between GitHub and DO.
Okay,
and if we need to change it, we need to change both halves anyway. So having a copy is useless.
Okay. But the way I log in using CD is still valid, right? Like SSH CD at IP.
No, so I would.
Oh wait, that's not valid because it's using my local.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So
you're suggesting like just trying this?
I suggest.
Or just do root.
Root, yeah, root, and then switch the user.
Okay. Okay.
And then if you go to home/cb and then ls, I'm hoping.
Wait. What do you want me to do?
Just to see if the files are there.
Oh, okay.
There you go, Docker Compose staging. Awesome.
Okay.
So when that action or that pipeline ran, it copied the Docker Compose staging here. And the next thing that the action needs to do is to essentially run that.
Make sure everything.
Yeah. I've just remembered why that DO secret was there. That DO auth token. But no, it's okay. We deleted it. It's okay.
Okay.
One thing that I did at this point, I think, was create a DNS entry for the staging droplet.
Okay.
Because I just like you, I can never remember the IP address. Might be worth doing now, but not essential.
So how are you on time?
I've no idea. It says 3 p.m. in the top right corner.
Yeah, it's been about an hour, so I just want to make sure that you were.
I'm okay for half an hour at least.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can punt on DNS. Like I can look up the structure and try to do myself, or
should we carry on going through the action and see if we can get that container running? I think DNS is a fairly straightforward one.
Okay, so punt on DNS. So this run deployment stuff is failing. No such file or directory.
Because it's now inside project.
Oh, right. So is there something that...
So somewhere in here.
Okay, yeah.
This...
So maybe.
Yeah. Just one... That might work. Try that.
Okay.
My hesitation was I was wondering if when you run Docker Compose, you have to be inside the project folder. But project is a subfolder of the home directory, so it should work. And this script could almost certainly be tidied. So one thing I would be thinking of was perhaps rather than have it all specified like this as lines in a YAML file, we just pull it out into a script file itself and just run that. And I think the environment variables get passed around quite a few times. They go from the environment variables in the GitHub Actions to environment variables on the Droplet to environment variables inside Docker to environment variables used in Django. So there's a lot of passing of stuff between, and I don't know if it's all necessary, but.
I'm surprised there's two of these running right now with one commit.
What does create do?
I don't know why it says create. I thought what I pushed up was just fix file path.
There's somebody. Oh no, that is you that's just pushed it, isn't it?
Test 175.
It says pull request 176. Synchronize. Have we got another action that runs on pull request? Is it a test thing or a?
I don't.
What's test.yaml?
Wait, where do you see test.yaml? Oh, did someone else create a pull request just now? Or no, that's not it.
If you click it, I think it's a different action.
Okay. That I
it's
created,
test.
but forgot
it's
about.
Test.
Oh,
it's that,
okay.
Yeah, it's that bottom one, which I don't know what it is.
Oh, it's
Running
it
the
runs tests. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So there's almost certainly a dependency chain that we want to look at. So one runs and then the other, but problem for later.
Yeah. Also the staging versus stage. I mean, like it's good to keep this around so I can see like the work that you did, but maybe confusing.
We've definitely been it. So what I can't remember is, where do we create the Docker container itself? Is that earlier on in the staging action, or is that build image? Yeah, it's build image. And it pushes it to the GitHub registry. So if people are asking where's the Docker image for the backend, it's in the packages associated with the project. So if you want to see that in the interface, I think you have to go to the parent, the organization rather than the project, and there's a packages folder.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So basically,
and that will have your container images and your Docker pull.
Hey, let's see.
But this is just it'd be very similar to Docker Hub.
Okay.
I just ended up using GitHub because it was easier to keep it all in the same place.
That's great. Some of these are actually useful.
So basically, you can it's been standard for people to host it on dockerhub.com, but GitHub is competing.
It depends. I think most of the cloud providers have a place. So Amazon has one, Google has one, Azure has one. If you're doing it for work, I think you typically end up with your own for your team, so not a public one. Right. Docker Hub has been the default public one. GitHub offered packages, which I think it started as NPM packages. And then they added Docker container images. And then there's open source ones. There's things like Harbor, etc., where if you want to go and run your own, you can.
Oh, great.
Cool. Nice Docker containers, pulling, staging. Right, so this is now the action itself is working, so it's actually trying to start Docker. Which I can see because the error message there is a Docker compose error message. It said I can't find the network that's specified, and you'd be able to recreate this without pushing and going through all of the GitHub action stuff. But if you just go to the home folder on the Droplet and run Docker compose, the Docker compose up, you might have to specify some environment variables, etc. But you can just basically trigger it here and see if it runs.
Wait, sorry. Go to home. Here. Right?
Home CB, home CB project.
Right.
Oh,
and then.
So yeah, if you run Docker compose up, and then I think you have to pass the file name, so -f, and then that file name.
Okay.
This will fail because there's a load of environment variables you need to specify.
Okay.
And you can see why I think taking that script out of the YAML and putting it in a separate script would be useful, because then we could just go and run it. But the reason that's failing is, I think, a question or a decision I made in how I was going to deploy this when I did it. And I don't know if it's a decision we want to keep. when you run a Django project in production, the consensus seemed to be that you stick a reverse proxy in front of it. So Nginx, I think, is the common one. But some form of reverse proxy in front of it. In development, I think you just hit it natively. You don't do anything. You don't put Nginx in front of it. The production setup, I think, uses the reverse proxy, so Nginx, to serve the static files as well as proxy the requests that come into Django. And I had those in two separate containers. One was Django, and one was the proxy, which is that other Docker Compose definition. And in order to get them to talk to each other, because they were two separate Docker Compose projects, I created a fixed network. So rather than have, when Docker Compose starts deploying I think it's called a stack, you get a network that's specific for the stack. So it's all self-contained. And because these were two separate stacks, I needed to refer to a common network, which is external, so that both stacks could talk to each other. And that's why it's saying you haven't created that network. It doesn't exist, so I can't start the project. I'm not sure that's a thing that we want to do. I'm not sure that's the way we want to set it up. And I wasn't using Nginx. I cheated and was using something else, which is why that auth token was there. The quickest way to make this work, just so that we can see that the container is starting and the Django project is running, is probably just to delete that reference to that external network. And then there's a question of how we want to deploy Django.
And you mean whether we want to use Nginx or
something else, or do we want them as separate containers? Do we want them in separate projects? How do we want to actually deploy them? The reason I separated this all out was I was using one host, one droplet for both staging and prod.
Yep.
Which may not be a good idea, but if you wanted to have, for example, one droplet that could host a copy of every pull request that was created, you want multiple instances of the backend running on the same host, and therefore wanted to do something clever with the proxy in front of it, which just, the more clever you try and be, the more complex it becomes. So I guess for now, until we show that we need to do that, we could just delete the external network and see if the container comes up and runs. So that's in the Docker Compose definition. And the reason that key was there, just for context, is I was using a reverse proxy in front of Django, and the reverse proxy would create the TLS keys with certificates with Let's Encrypt. And in order to do that, it needs to set DNS entries so that you can prove you own the server. And to do that, it was using the DigitalOcean API to create DNS entries such that they could issue the cert. So it would always keep that HTTPS certificate up to date. That's why it was there. Definitely not needed. So yeah, it was using traffic as or Trafic as the reverse proxy. But let's try and get this up and running without
this.
Yeah, without this. So in the other Docker Compose file, the one for staging, we will see that we got the Docker image. we've got some labels which we could remove if we wanted to, and I would suggest that for simplicity we probably should, because they're not needed with our current setup.
Right. Like if we're not using Trafic, then this will.
We don't need those labels.
So just remove labels altogether.
Remove all of them, yeah. There's the start command, which I'm hoping hasn't changed, but if it has, we can figure that out later. We've got the database URL, the email host, which we'll need to change, by the way, when we figure out how to send email. But for now, it's just left there. Django settings, there's your Django secret key, your admin URL, allowed hosts.
Sorry,
again,
I'll just Google this. This is a Django thing, I know.
It's definitely a Django thing. I don't know why it's there, but what it does is basically says these are the host names I'll serve traffic for.
Yeah.
And that's
So codebodies.com would be a good one, and I don't know what happens if you leave it empty. I don't know what happens if you put star in it, etc. But as we were working towards a production setup, I think that key is specified as one of the secrets in GitHub and just passed through to allow us to change it. And then we almost certainly want to remove that SSL redirect equals true, because we don't have SSL set up.
Django allowed hosts. Do you remember if you specified it as like staging, or sorry, API staging? Okay, then maybe I should go and update it.
It would have been whatever the DNS entry was for staging. So it might have been that.
Okay, I think it was that. So I'll update it.
You could always just put star in there for now.
You want to try it again, maybe?
Which will match anything.
Okay. Wait. It's just a security issue if since this Django secret won't be like tied to the specific route that we want to deploy this to.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I'll leave it for now, and then I'll change the star if it turns into a problem.
I think we'll know if we see an error page from Django. We'll know we're in the right place with getting it all up and running. So
yeah,
I'd call that success.
Okay.
One last thing you need to change is you see that networks. So this is where I tell it to use a predefined network. You can remove line 18 all the way down to 23. And that's much simpler. That basically says just start Django like you would in a local machine. To proxy. Yeah.
Oh, actually, I was going to go there.
All right.
It's going to turn it to culture I can always move.
Just something that's worth making a note of for looking at later would be when I did this, I think I triggered the action on release, what is it not called is it a release? A tag. I triggered it on a tag, which gave me a version number that we wanted to push. And so that version number was then propagated through the script, and when it created the container image and pushed it to the GitHub packages, I think it tagged it with a version number, so 001 or 002 type thing. And then that tag gets passed through an environment variable to Docker Compose, which makes sure it pulls the latest version of the container image, or the version, sorry, that corresponds to the version that's being built. And why that matters is, I think, well, I'm not sure what happens when you redeploy the same image. So the tag hasn't changed or the version hasn't changed. I don't know if it just looks at it and goes, hey, this image is one I'm already running, and doesn't bother to redeploy. A couple of ways around that would be, to keep it simple, we could just stop the currently running one and repull the image. But you lose track of which image relates to which thing that's being built without the tagging. So that the tagging of the Docker container or the Docker image would be worth looking at.
How did you get the version number?
If you have a look at the Actions YAML, API staging YAML, which is in your VS Code, open at the moment. And the build step, if you have a look at the documentation for that action, which I think was called build image. No, so yeah, right up the top, the build. So line 25 is the one. But what I was just looking for the action name, which I think is publish Docker GitHub action. Which you'll have to look for the actions marketplace, and there'll be a documentation there that tells you. Yeah. So publish Docker GitHub action. And it's by L. Gore.
Al Gore. Docker publish.
First one on the list. First one.
Publish Docker.
Yeah, it's that one.
This one. Oh, Al Gore. I thought you said Al Gore. Okay.
Oh no.
Okay.
So yeah, that looks like the right one. Now, if you scroll down for, they do need a better way of identifying these.
Yep. Awesome.
So push releases by their Git name, e.g. refs tags my tag name. Now I think this comes from when it checks out the project, GitHub Actions gives it the branch, the tag, the release, and that's where it picks it up from.
Okay.
I actually got.
So this works.
It worked. Wow. How do we test? So if you go to the actual SSH on the Droplet, and if you run inside that folder Docker Compose -f, I think, for the file, and then give it that YAML file, and then just do status or something. No. Oh, just Docker PS. All right, so it's running.
If I go to, okay.
No, it won't be exposing. It won't expose anything externally.
Okay.
So you could do a Docker exec. Can't remember off the top of my head how to open a session inside that running container.
Should I rest now or wait? I have 3 parts.
So the two things, it's not going to be publicly visible because there's no port exposed from that container.
Okay.
So it's not accessible from outside the container network. I can't remember what port Django listens on by default. And
you said it was 22, right? At some point.
That's SSH.
Oh. Okay. Is this the same port in secrets?
No. It'll be in the Django project config.
Oh, okay. In like our settings.py.
Something like that, yeah. Search for port.
No port.
Try WSGI or. These files were what really put me off Django. The way I, from memory, the way I figured this stuff out was what the Django project appeared to be doing was basically saying if environment variables are specified, use those. Otherwise, use some stuff that's hard coded.
Okay.
Just a comedy. I'm gonna follow this guy into the room. Oh, I'm dead.
Sorry about the background. So
that's right.
I need the long. I have the cards. I have one card.
So the port is something we would have gotten with the reverse proxy setup, or we would.
Well, if we deploy a reverse proxy in front of it, the reverse proxy will listen on 443, which is HTTPS, and then it will forward the requests to Django backend, which will be something. So we'll need to know what it is. There's 2 places I'm thinking we could find it. One is in some of those files. We just keep searching for the word port. And the other is if we look in that container definition or the Docker Compose definition for the proxy that was part of my original PR, the one with traffic in it. And you can see there it listens on 80 and 443. And nope, there's nothing in there. Have you got the original staging YAML?
Yep.
The one that's associated with that?
Yes. This is the original stage.yaml.
Yes, where it had all of the traffic lines that we deleted. There you go.
That's
TLS. No. No idea how that was working. Oh, there we go. uwsgi.ini.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And if that's not in the same place as it was, then that line might need changing.
Okay. Here we go.
Did I create the file? Nope. 8,000.
Okay, cool.
So we need to change the Django startup to be in Docker Compose staging. We need to change that startup script to reference the correct uwsgi.ini. I think it's the last YAML block. You can really see why this would be better in a script, can't you?
Okay.
Where do we actually run? Or is it? Where is it defined? Where's it defined? Ah, not in here. In the staging YAML. Yeah, sorry. Third tab.
Staging, this one.
Yeah. So, line 9 and 10.
Oh wow, yeah. This is old, right? This needs to be project.
Is it opt?
I don't know what. And yeah, I don't see an opt here, but so maybe there's no opt anymore.
So I think what we need to do is have a look, find the Docker syntax for opening a console on the container, and have a look at the Django error logs. I think it's docker exec -it something, but oh wow.
This one?
Yep, that line.
Okay, container name. So you're saying in here.
Unless it's in the logs.
Run.
Docker compose logs might do it. You need the F for the file. Again, mental note, we could tidy this up by renaming the file to docker-compose, and then it would pick it up by default.
Oh,
I have a double. I'm going to do a double.
Cool.
That's right.
There are warnings.
Yeah.
Warnings are fine. Why does it stop there?
Is that invalid? How do I like get it to? I don't know.
So I think it's died. If you go to do Docker instead of logs, do exec.
You mean Docker exec?
Docker compose.
Okay.
Before I say that, actually, let me just see if Docker compose has an exec command. Yeah, it does. So Docker compose exec and then -it and then give it the image name, which I think is backend, maybe.
How did you find the image name?
I could be wrong. In that file that you've got open, app_staging, possibly. I think it's app_staging.
based on what's in here?
Yes.
Oh, I see. This. Okay, got it.
I could be wrong. The way to find out. And you need the command, so /bin/bash.
I can try pulling implicit connected. I mean, it's 3.
Exec options. Keywords van reserves command. That looks right to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Ah, you need the file. So -f and then.
Or you mean like the
Docker compose file. The more I see you type that, the more I think we should rename it. IT are not valid options, so you can remove those. Capital T.
Why is it saying app station 1?
Do
you have a lot of burn cards?
Docker compose -f file name and then PS. There's nothing running. Yeah. I think the containers died because it couldn't. Yeah, see, it's restarting.
Oh, just continuously restarting for.
Yeah, so you could always take that container ID and do docker logs, and then that container ID.
Makes sense since you have like no.
Oh yeah. I mean that makes a lot of sense.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess like I can commit this, see if it running. If not, then maybe even try removing the opt.
I would remove opt.
Oh, just remove it from the outset.
Yeah.
Do I need to force that at the beginning or
no? Let's have a look at the Docker file that the image is built from.
How do I?
It'll be in the repo root.
Oh no, I did the wrong.
So it'd be just a file called Docker file in the backend folder.
So, let me see.
Okay. You mean the Docker compose file?
I'm surprised. Try looking in Docker compose.
Oh, Optus and
that's a lot better than last time. Those arrows were completely useless. That's the issue. The arrows were all useless. Like the throwing knives. You were just.
Yeah, this doesn't look like the right file though. I suspect op should be in there, but if I'm trying to find. Have a look at Docker compose. No, sorry. Have a look at the actions YAML, the one for the workflow. Yeah, API staging, and then the build image section. So there, that's got a Docker file specified. Where's that? Project Docker. I think I saw it. No. Oh, yeah. There you go. Yeah, so it copies requirements to /opt. And then it runs pip3 install in opt. and then it sets Python path to /opt. So yeah, opt is in there. Double check that again. So you've got code buddies. Why have we got in the Docker file? It goes to the Python path is /opt/code buddies. So I think what you'll find is /opt/code buddies/project.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And at that point, yeah, we try and see what happens.
Yeah, thanks. Also, we're like over time again.
God, let's see it work. Let's see it, unless you need to stop. I want to see.
I'm totally fine. I want to be respectful of your time.
Fine. Oh God! Wow.
Try fixing. Yeah, I mean, if this doesn't work, we can we can talk a little bit about what to do next, and I can try it on my own, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'll follow up on GitHub. Yeah, I learned so much, by the way. This is, I mean, like, I feel
debugging,
very
right?
out of my elements. I don't usually do this, but it's kind of fun.
I think it is a legitimate question as to what I think I asked. I think there was a discussion on an issue, or it might have been in Slack, about why do we even need a reverse proxy? And I think the answer was along the lines of standard practice. It's documented, I think, as well in the Django production deployment, and I think when we do things like there's a Django management thing where you run management commands. I forget what it's called, but one of those was like collect static files, and that moves them all to a certain folder. And I think as part of our build process, we need to take those static files and package them up along with the reverse proxy such that they can be served.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that from like the collect static thing, but I'm not sure that we actually need it because we're using Django only for creating our API, and we're not serving up the rest of the Django. Yeah.
Except what's the debug toolbar-y stuff and those admin interfaces.
Oh,
so
right.
If we were just using the JSON endpoints, I don't think we'd need them.
Do we need the admin interfaces though? I don't know.
I suggest that's a topic for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
But I suspect if we don't have that, and we don't have I think the debug toolbar people were finding useful.
Okay.
But it's turned off in production. So we may not need the static assets. But I do think there should be a chat, maybe it's a hangout with the right people on it. We just talk about, do we want a reverse proxy and how best to deploy it? Because the one answer is we could put the reverse proxy inside the same Docker Compose stack. And then it would just be an Nginx deployment inside the same Docker Compose. It comes up and it just works. Only two challenges to that are the SSL, so the TLS HTTPS piece. And then what you end up with is it makes it difficult to do like different stacks per, let's say, release version or per tag or per PR. But if we don't need that, I would suggest we don't need that for the first few deployments anyway.
Yeah,
and we don't need to worry about it. We could just chuck maybe it's even just an Nginx inside the Docker Compose stack and just be done with it until we find that's not good enough.
So the two alternatives are using an Nginx versus reverse proxy.
I was about to start pointing at the screen, but we could create one reverse proxy that sits in front of everything, and it could do things like, for example, take a PR number, so pr1234.staging.codebuddies.com, and it could route that to a deployment of pr1234.
Oh wow!
So you can do clever things like that. But that's fairly complex and lots of moving parts to set up. Or we could keep it very simple and just say we only ever have one deployed. So what we'll do is we'll just deploy staging from the main branch whenever something gets merged, or we just deploy from whatever PR is the last, that type of thing, and then we just put the reverse proxy inside the same deployment. The difference there is, in the first scenario, the reverse proxy isn't part of the deployment. It's something that always runs. It's something that's always there configured, and it's doing that routing of traffic for you. In the second scenario, the reverse proxy is part of the deployment, and it would get deployed along with everything. I think that's the distinction.
Okay.
But
yeah, I do think the simpler one would be better. And then not better, but like we don't need it to be that fancy. Like we do have that going on with Netlify with the front end, but I think for the API it's fine to just have deploy whenever whenever something gets merged into main.
Yeah, that's the thing is, it only matters if it doesn't matter, or it needs to be thought about in context with when you trigger the pipeline.
Yeah.
If you trigger on merge to main, that's fine, right? Because you can just say staging runs whatever's in main.
Right.
If you want to deploy something and run a load of front-end tests against it before you merge to main, then it becomes more challenging.
Oh, okay. Wait. And this is back to the question of separating out staging from main, right? Which me, I don't know.
To be honest, the simplest answer at the moment, I think, is just deploy what's in main and be done with it. Right? Rely on your local tests and testing before you push to main or you merge with main. And then just make sure that staging is always a reflection of what's in main. And don't add complexity unless we need it.
So setting up a separate staging branch. Wait, so I guess like an easy way to have staging separate from main is to just create two droplets, right? And have one hooked up to API staging.codebuddies.org, the other one hooked up to API production.codebuddies.org.
Yeah.
And have that fire from branches.
Yeah, and but you could use the actions, and actually you don't need a separate branch. If you just have anything merged to main deploys into staging immediately, and you can do that by limiting your action to only run against main, and then just use the release mechanism to formally release it to production. So if you tag it and then hit the release button, just trigger your action on release that pushes the same code into prod. And at that point, prod and staging would be the same. Save managing a branch.
I mean, if we do want the staging branch to be like, to be more in the future than production, which, I think I'll have to start a thread about what do we actually do. I'll start a discussion about whether we actually want that. I think that's
my
Okay.
Cue lots of opinion. Did it work?
Let's see. Oh, green arrow so far.
This bit
I
works.
mean,
This bit's
yeah.
all fine.
Sorry. This bit works. We're back at the here, right?
So if you do a docker ps
Okay.
to list the running processes or containers.
Do I need to be in project, right?
No, you don't.
Oh, okay.
And then you can do docker logs for 0f231. I don't think you even need to do the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Opt code buddies project manage.py. So where is manage.py is the question in relation to the root.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be here because this.
Yeah, I know. So what's supposed to happen is if we spin up Docker Compose up, then it looks at this file and then.
So inside this file is the name of a Docker image.
Mm-hmm. I see.
That Docker image sits on GitHub, and that Docker image is built from the Docker file that's the second tab in your VS Code.
Oh, is it meant to be CodeBuddy's backend project? Maybe.
I don't know. Have a look at the Docker file. Next one along. To the left.
Oh. Never mind. It's still opt.
It's this build process, yeah. So this runs in. So where's manage.py? It's right next to the Docker file. So it's not inside project. There's no project.
Oh.
That's the problem.
That's why.
We don't need project.
Is that
yeah.
Why? Okay. I think that's it. Right.
I think there is a little utility called dive, D-I-V-E,
Mm-hmm.
which you can pass a container image name, and it opens up a terminal-based browser that lets you browse the file system inside a container image.
Nice. Okay.
And so if we really get stuck on where is that file,
okay.
I suspect the answer is there's no project, but if we really get stuck, that's quite a nice little utility to browse. And this is the file. This is the utility I used when we were looking at how big is the image.
Wait, do I install this while I'm in, like, SSH in?
Anyway, no, it'd be it's a local development tool.
Okay, but are you saying I can dive into this file while I'm like here, right?
No, it's into the actual Docker image. So that is the image that you see in
this one.
GitHub packages. Yeah, it's that.
Okay.
So that image, people could run it on their laptops if they wanted to run staging. They could run it on their own production instance. They can run it anywhere.
So this image is hosted on
yes
on CodeBuddy's packages.
Yeah, that one. I was about to try and copy that. Wrong screen. Yeah, you can see in the packages where it gives you the docker pull command. And you can see that the tag it's got, which is the part after the colon, is the name of the branch. So if I was to deploy a new branch and have the same action running against it, we would get different image versions. So you can always refer back to which image was the one being used at a particular point in time. It's quite nice.
Wait, so sorry, which tab were you talking about?
In the second browser tab that's open, the packages, you can see that in the first line, so where it says basically pull the image from command line, you've got the image name, which is cb-backend, and then it's got a colon, and you'll see that's that tagging thing that we looked at working. So basically it's tagged it with the name of the branch. So you could imagine this action running against a different branch. You would end up with two versions of the image deployed. And so if I wanted to run that version locally, I can just take that line as presented on screen, and I can run that Docker image on my machine, and it would be built from the branch that you've got.
Okay.
An interesting question for later is, how do you make those public?
Make what public?
Those images public. You need to be authenticated with GitHub to pull them.
New type of error. That's good.
That's working. That's proper Python error, that is. So DB URL.
DB URL is wrong.
Yes. So it looks like you've taken it. When you pasted it in, you basically gave it the host name. And I think what it wants is something more akin to a connection string type thing. The format for connection strings that it will pick up, I don't know.
Okay, cool. So I'll just, I can look that up myself, and I'll like update the GitHub secrets, right? Like do staging DB URL here.
That's the one.
Awesome.
And then it might start working. But yeah, it's now running Django. So you're into the world of Python stuff.
Awesome.
So a few questions to think about, but it's a lot closer.
Yeah, thank you. Stop the stream now.